Hey, class, I want to welcome you back to the podcast. And obviously, last week we took a week off because we were working on our assignments. I hope that went well for everyone. So we're back in the swing of things here. And this week we're looking at chapters 5 and 6 of the book Everyone Communicates, Few Connect by John Maxwell. Last week we explored how connection goes beyond words, the energy required to connect, and how authenticity builds trust. These principles laid the foundation for understanding that true connection is not just about talking, but about engaging meaningfully with others. And I think that's key. And that's something you got to remember. If you're going to lead people well, if you're going to build teams, if you're going to build organizations, you've got to be able to communicate and engage people, okay, at a meaningful level, at the heart level, I would almost say. So today we're going to continue our journey into chapters 5 and 6, where Maxwell expands on the idea that connecting is a skill that anyone can develop. That's anybody. Okay, it might look differently from person to person, but all of us can develop this skill, and that the best communicators always seek common ground. So we're going to talk about that today. We will explore why communication isn't just for the naturally gifted, how we can overcome barriers to understand others, and why engagement is the key to lasting connections. So that's what we're going to look at today. That one line there, I think, is really important for us to understand. Communication isn't just for the naturally gifted. We've all seen people who are naturally gifted at communication. I've seen them, you've seen them. They speak and they don't ever say an or they don't ever say they don't ever repeat a word, or they don't have a fallback word that they fall on. Mine is right. I'll say that a lot, right. Some other people say a lot. We've all met those really great communicators out there who just seem to be naturally gifted. They just came out of their mother's womb talking in perfection. And I know for me, when I listen to someone like that, I can get a little bit jealous, but I want us to understand this, that great communication isn't just for those people. And I will tell you this, that there are some people who are naturally gifted at speaking that don't know how to connect with other people. I remember years ago going to listen to a person speak. It was like a financial seminar, and I went as a favor to a friend, kept inviting me to go. So I went, and I went with somebody else, and as soon as the gentleman got done speaking, he got up there and did his thing, and it was just perfect, and how he said it and how he stood, and he had you can tell he'd been to Toastmasters a few times. And he got off the stage, and the guy who I was with kind of leaned over next to me and said, well, you can tell he's done that a few times, right? And the point he was trying to say is that was just so rehearsed. It was so perfect. It didn't really connect with either one of us. We got in our cars and, went off in our directions and didn't buy any of the products or didn't partake because, again, the gentleman on stage knew how to communicate. He didn't know how to connect. What I'm talking about right here is really important. If you get the connection down, okay, if you understand that part of it, communication becomes much, much easier, and you begin to realize it's for anybody. The connection piece is the most important aspect of communication. So let's dive in here. We've got 3 lessons we'll look at today. So lesson number 1 is that connection is a skill, not just a talent. One of the biggest misconceptions about effective communicators is that they're simply born with natural talent. Maxwell, in his book, there in chapter 5, debunks this idea, explaining that connection is a skill that anyone can develop through intentional effort and practice. Okay, so remember, that's the key. Yes, we can all get better in terms of our communication. We can all get better in terms of how we get up in front of people and speak. All of that can be done better, but connection can also be better. And again, I would say that if you're going to master one, between communication and connection, you want to have both of them down, but really master connection. That's where the engagement is going to be found, in connecting with other people. So Maxwell outlines 5 key factors that influence a communicator's ability to connect. Number 1 are the relationships, who you know. So leveraging existing relationships to build credibility and trust. Okay, that's key. You see this every 4 years or every 2 years when it comes to elections. What's one of the most important things, if you've ever been involved in politics, one of the most important things that people the candidates who are running for office, one of the first things they try to do is shore up as many endorsements as possible, because what that allows people to do is to say, well, I don't know so and so, right? I don't know Joe Smith who's running for office, but I do know Maria Espinosa, whoever it is, right? I do know this person, and I voted for this person before. I trust this person before. They've been in the, assembly. They've been in the state senate. They've been in the city council for several years. I trust them. I don't know Joe Smith, but I know Maria over here. So because I know Maria and they endorse Joe Smith, I'll vote for them. Okay. That's one way that we can connect is through other people. Oftentimes when you're speaking in front of a group of people, you want someone who everyone knows to get up in front of you and to introduce you, because they might say, well, I don't know who this person is, but we trust that person. Okay. So we're giving up some of our time because we trust person over here. So relationships are key. Insight. Number two, insight, what you know. Sharing valuable perspectives and knowledge that resonate with others. People respect and appreciate those who bring new and helpful information. When you get up to speak, don't be lazy. Okay, make sure that there's something new that they take away. If all they're doing is they're giving up, a half hour of their time or 45 minutes, or I do corporate trainings where we do 4-hour trainings with people. If people are giving up 4 hours of their day for you, there better be something new that they haven't heard of before or shared in a new way, right? There's not a lot of new knowledge out there, right? If someone is the most brilliant person in the world, but you can share things in different ways. So make sure you show your insight. Success. Okay. Using personal achievements and experiences to establish authority. Okay. Now, again, we've talked about this before. I'd be very careful with this. If all you do is get up and talk about your success, I promise you're going to lose the crowd. I promise you that 100%. I've been doing this long enough to know you will lose the crowd if the only thing you do is get up and talk about your successes. Okay. It's important. One of the rules I have is that my bio should speak for me. My bio, the one that they get ahead of time, or if someone introduces me, they get to say all the things and brag about and all the achievements and all that kind of stuff. That will be there. Okay. If they want to look me up later, they can find me on LinkedIn. All my successes are there, right? All that stuff is, but when I get up in front of people, I'd be careful about the successes. Okay. It's okay to share a little bit about that. But I'd say be careful about spending too much time on your successes. We talked about that last week, the authenticity piece. When you bring your full self, you and I both know, okay, that we're all jacked up. We've all got things about us that we don't want other people to see. And I'm not saying that you get up in front of a room of people and you share everything. You don't want to do that. We talked about that. That's oversharing. But you certainly want to get up in front of a room of people and you want to share with them stories about your life. So success, yes, okay, but don't spend too much time on that, okay? Number 4 is your ability, what you can do. Demonstrating skills and inspire confidence in connection. People gravitate towards those who effectively apply their knowledge in meaningful ways. But again, usually your bio will do the speaking for you. If you are a person of credibility, and you're up in front of a room speaking, and you're not just a traveling speaker, right? That's your job. But if you've been asked to come speak because you have authority, your bio is going to do the work for you on that, right? That's the reason why you're in front of people speaking. So again, I would say don't spend too much time on your abilities and your successes. You can share some. I would always, if I'm going to share a success, I would always tell a story of failure that gets to success. Because again, I'm just trying to tell you, tell too many stories of your success and you're going to lose the crowd, because people don't understand that. What we all understand as human beings are missteps and failures, because we've all made those. Okay. And then number 5, sacrifice how you've lived. Show commitment and dedication through personal sacrifices. Genuine connection comes when others see that you've worked and invested in meaningful causes. Now, again, I would if I'm giving a speech, I'd point to somebody else. I'd point to someone in the room who's doing a really good job that everybody knows. Okay. So you can talk about all those things, but again, I would just be careful. Don't make it about you. We've already talked about that. It's the biggest, failure that most people make when it comes to public speaking. They get up and they just talk about themselves the whole time and they lose everybody. Okay. But but the point of all of this is that there are connection points to be made. I would stick with the top two, the relationships and the insights. Anytime you're speaking in front of a crowd, anytime you've got a meeting, focus on the insights that you're bringing to them. Focus on the value that you're going to bring to them, and I promise you that's going to build connection. So the key takeaway from lesson number one: no matter where you start, you can improve your ability to connect. Practice active listening, improve your storytelling. Stories are always great, right? Again, when you talk about a success or abilities or sacrifice, point to the story of someone else. And if you can't, but you've got the capability, show a video, right? Again, point the attention elsewhere, and show genuine interest in other people. With time and effort, you'll become you'll become a more effective communicator and build stronger relationships. Okay, so that's lesson number one. Now, lesson number two: find common ground. Find common ground. In chapter 6, Maxwell makes it clear the best communicators don't just talk, they find common ground. Building connection requires effort to understand where the other person is coming from. Without shared ground, conversations often feel disconnected and relationships struggle to grow. Maxwell identifies 4 common barriers that prevent us from doing this. Number 1 is assumption. Okay, thinking we already know what others know, feel, or want. This can lead to miscommunication and missed opportunities for deeper connections. That's number 1. Number 2, arrogance. Okay, if you want to break down common ground, or you want to break the connection with other people, come with arrogance, right? And I will tell you, I saw that in the last 2 weeks. I was a part of a process of hiring, and in some of that, we saw that. Okay. And I'll tell you, a person doesn't get to be part of the team when they bring some, arrogance to the table. So be very careful with that. Believing we don't need to learn from others. This creates walls between people and shuts down meaningful dialogue. I will tell you, no matter what, I could spend an hour on this one right here. I see leaders do this all the time. I see potential leaders do this all the time. I see teachers do this all the time. They get in front of a room of people, or they're leading a team of people, and somehow they think they have all the answers. And I promise you, you don't. There might be someone on this podcast today who's listening to this, and maybe that's you. I promise you, when you lose the arrogance, and obviously we're going to talk about this here in a second. The antidote to arrogance is what? It's humility, right? And humility comes with a mindset that, hey, I can learn from everyone at this table. It doesn't lessen your own experiences. It doesn't lessen your own skills or abilities, but you say, everyone at this table I can learn from. Okay. And they can learn from me as well. Right. So again, it's not lessening what you bring to the table, but when you come to the table that you have all the answers. And again, I just witnessed this. That's why I'm speaking so passionately about it. I saw a person walk away. Well, they didn't walk away. The job walked away from them because they brought arrogance to the table. Don't do it. Okay. Don't do it. Indifference is number 3. Okay, the 4 common barriers: indifference, not caring enough to understand the perspectives of others. I saw that as well from this person. Indifference and arrogance, and because of it, they lost a great opportunity. I promise you that. Number 4, control, withholding our own thoughts and feelings to maintain control over a conversation. This prevents authenticity and trust. You've seen people do this before. And usually it's someone who I would say this is the toxic behavior. So you're having a conversation and you're withholding information that could bring authenticity to it. Why? Because you're trying to maintain control. Anytime we try to maintain control over anything, whether it's connection or conversation or speeches or a room of people or whatever it is, I promise you it's not going to help us in the long term. Okay, release control. Okay, you don't need that. That's going to put a barrier between you and the other person, or you and other people. Okay, so how do we overcome these barriers? 1 is availability. Be open and accessible to others. Take time to engage and be present in conversations. That's key. We've already talked about that before. When you're having a conversation with one person, be with that person, even if it's just 30 seconds. Don't be looking over their shoulder trying to see who's coming next. Be with that person. Listening. Make a conscious effort to understand before responding. Active listening. Okay. Again, that's part of being present. Tell me more. Say more about that. Interesting. I didn't realize that. I'd like to know more. Whatever it is. Listen. Questioning. Ask open-ended questions to spark meaningful conversations. Good ideas invite dialogue and deeper understanding. Right? Follow up your listening with questions. Tell me more about that. Man, that sounds interesting. Openness. Share your own thoughts and feelings transparently. Okay. Vulnerability leads to stronger connections. I can't stress that one enough. Okay. If you've heard anything in the last couple of weeks, it's this idea of that authenticity, transparency, vulnerability. These kind of things take courage, but they bring greater connection with other people. And then humility. We've already talked about that. Acknowledge that you don't have all the answers and be willing to learn from others. I will tell you that that is a game changer there. Whenever a speaker gets up in front of a room of people and they just say, hey, I'm here to talk to you about this, but today, uh, I want to invite you to be part of the conversation because I want to learn from you as well. That invites the listener in. He says, wow, they value what I have to say as well. Okay. Finding common ground builds trust and makes communication more effective. The best leaders and communicators prioritize this skill because it fosters understanding and genuine relationships. When people feel heard and valued, they are more likely to engage and collaborate meaningfully. I can't stress that enough. When people feel heard and valued. One more story here, and then move on to our final lesson here, lesson number 3 was sitting in a board meeting. There's an organization here in San Diego County. It's a nonprofit. It's a pretty large nonprofit, and I have the privilege and opportunity to sit on their board of directors. One of the things that I found is that this is an incredible group to be a part of. Incredible. The senior staff come to the meetings. The obviously the CEO, the other board members. One of the things that they've gotten better about over time, but haven't always been great about, is bringing the board members into the conversation. And I remember one time they had somebody come do a I don't know what this person was there for. I had just started on the board, and so I had committed to myself with this kind of a board. I'm not going to say anything for 2 years. My first 2 years on the board, I'm just going to listen and ask questions, but really just try not to say anything. And so I was holding to that. And about 18 months in, they invited this woman to come, and she was doing kind of a training with the board, or she was presenting something. I don't know, but I'll never forget this. I'll never forget this. Because the board didn't work this way, and to be honest, it still doesn't work this way. She's kind of facilitating a dialogue, and she gets done, and everyone spoke, or most people spoke. There were 2 of us in the room who hadn't spoke, and I was in a season where I said, I'm not going to speak, I'm not going to say anything, just listen. And she says, she asked the other person, and she said, I haven't heard from you, JC. Do you mind sharing kind of what your thought about all this that's on the board? And then I was able to share openly and transparently about my own thoughts. I'll never forget that as long as I live. That was such a leadership moment for her to bring out, whatever I needed to share or wanted to share, to bring that out to the table. And I've tried to do that my own self. I learned such a huge lesson from her that day. Okay. And it's this, that she understood that. She understood what we're talking about here. She understood that people want to feel heard and valued, and that when they do, they're more likely to engage. And she brought that out that day. I wish she'd come to more of the board meetings, to be honest with you. Lesson number 3, engagement is key to connection. To truly connect, you must engage your audience, whether it's one-on-one, in a small group, or on a big stage. Maxwell highlights the traits of great connectors. If you see great connectors, here's what they all have in common. Number 1, they all have passion. People respond to enthusiasm. If you're not excited about what you're saying, why should they be? We've all been to the person, listening to a person speak, and it's just boring. And you can tell they're not even passionate about it. They don't even believe in what they're saying. If they don't, why should we? We just went through an election cycle. I always tell people this. Elections really come down to, and you know this as well, elections come down to which candidate can get the person, which candidate can get more people out to the polls to make the vote. That's what it comes down to. It's not even the most brilliant of people. We've all seen that before. It's not the smartest people. It's not the most qualified people who become our leaders in a lot of ways. It's the people who can talk you into getting to the polls and to voting. That's the person who's going to win the election, right? And most often that comes because of their passion, right? Whoever the person is, whatever side they're on, we say that person's passionate. That's a person we want to follow. Okay. Number 2, engagement to key. Number 2 trait of great connectors. Number 2, illustrative storytelling. Okay, so tell stories. Stories bring concepts to life. They've done some studies where they've shown that most people will forget most of what you say. A story is going to stick with them. Okay. So be willing to tell stories. And then number three, and we've talked about this so much, you're going to hear this over and over and over again. What do you think it is? Authenticity. People can sense when you're being real. Don't try to impress other people. Focus on being honest and being vulnerable. Make it about them. It's not about you looking great. It's not about, not that you want to get up in front of a room of people and look messed up or sound messed up, but it's all about them. Be authentic. So here's a challenge. In your next conversation or presentation, be intentional about engaging your audience. Use a personal story. Show enthusiasm and ask thought-provoking questions. You can do that even if you're giving a talk. I tell people one of the most genius ways to start a talk is just by asking a question. The brain cannot ignore a question. What are you having for dinner tonight? Every single one of you heard that. Every single one of you heard that. What did you do this past weekend? Every single one of you heard that. Okay. The brain cannot ignore a question. If you're struggling or you feel like you're losing your audience, bring a question into it that brings everybody back. Okay. A thought-provoking question, right? You'll notice a difference in how people respond. In closing, to recap the top three lessons, connection is a skill, not just a talent. That's number one. Anyone can learn to connect through practice and effort, and it will take that. Okay. If you're I'm going to be honest with you, and I say this, and some people don't believe it's true. I actually am pretty awkward in person, and I've come to realize that. I hate small talk. Some of you understand what I'm saying. I just can't take it. Whenever I go to an event, if I've got to go to an event, and let's say they say the event starts at 5:30, I call and say, when does the actual event start? Because they'll say 5:30 and then you get there and it's a whole hour of networking. And I just learned to ignore it. So they'll say, well, actually the presentation started at 6:30. So I show up at 6:25 and get my seat so I can be ready to go. I'm not great about it, but I've learned over time because at some point you have to be, right? And a lot of what we're talking about here are stuff that I've had to learn over time. But it does take practice. And there are times that I've left events and I thought, man, I did not connect at all well tonight. I didn't do that well. I didn't do that well. But over time, I will tell you that there's been more success. And again, the biggest secret to success, if you want to connect with other people, especially if it's one-on-one, just ask questions. People love to talk about themselves. Okay. I have found that time and time again, even to this day, I'll be in a conversation. I'll ask someone about themselves and they'll just talk. And then they realize they're talking too much. So they'll ask me a question and I can see as soon as I start talking, their eyes glaze over. They just want to talk about themselves. So I give like a 2-sentence response and bring it back to them. Tell me more about this. Oh, their eyes light up again and they can't wait to talk. It's pretty easy to do, right? But it takes some time and practice to be able to get that down. So you can connect. It is a skill. It's not just a talent. It's not just something that certain people have, but it might, like me, it might take you a little bit more time to do it. Finding common ground. So this is number 2. Finding common ground is essential. Avoid assumptions, arrogance, indifference can control. Instead, focus on listening and humility. Listen and be humble. And number 3, engagement is key. Bring more passion, storytelling, and authenticity to your communication. These insights are game changers for anyone looking to become, and that's you, to become a better leader, communicator, or relationship builder as you go about your week. And again, I hope that some of what we're talking about, you're applying in your conversations tomorrow. Okay. As soon as you get to work tomorrow, start applying this stuff. It will work. I promise you that. Okay. Challenge yourself to implement these strategies in your daily interactions. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that these podcasts are adding value to you, not just for the class, but I hope that they're adding value to your journey, and that you feel that they're helping out your leadership as well. So grateful for every single one of you. I'll see you in the next podcast. Reach out if you need anything. Take care.